My name is Jack Foley.
And I'm Adelle Foley.
Tonight, in this anthology for television, we're going to try to suggest to you some of the kinds of poetry in which we're involved. That poetry is called performance poetry. Sometimes you feel so low down that you have to put your strength in a higher power, or at least in a stronger personality. This is a song about that. It's called Jim.
Gee, baby, are you feeling suicidal? Gee, baby, is your outlook really dim? Gee, baby, put your motor car on idle and leave everything to Jim. Gee, baby, are you feeling really loaded? Gee, baby, does your kettle hate your pot? Gee, baby, when your cigarette exploded? You say you get tired of every little thing you got. Jim's the kind of guy I can't describe him. He's just kind of, you know, the best. Even if you're sly, you couldn't find him if the string of metal going up and down his chest. Gee, baby, are you stuck up in your own yard? Gee, baby, did your life all shift to Jim? Gee, baby, when you're headed for the boneyard, just leave everything to him. I know he's thorough, he couldn't be more or less. Truth is on his side, but every mother the pride of CBS. Gee, baby, are you stuck up in your own yard? Gee, baby, did your light bulb shift to Jim? Gee, baby, when you're headed for the boneyard, just get a lawyer and leave everything to him. Jim.
I'm half Irish and half Italian, and that fact has determined a surprising amount of my life. Adelle and I are going to begin with a little story about my father, who was, for part of his life, a tap dancer in vaudeville. When I knew him, that career was over, but there were many stories and reminiscences. This is a little part of a speech I gave recently on being Irish American, and it begins with a question.
What does it mean to be Irish?
Or more specifically,
What does it mean to be Irish American?
to get from my house to Cornell University, where I was a freshman in 1958, you drove up the hypotenuse of a right triangle. My father, who had been born in New York State farm country in 1895 and who grew up with the automobile, drove up the two sides of the triangle thinking they were the hypotenuse. He never quite trusted that machine to get him where he wanted to go, and before any trip of consequence, he would fortify himself with a few drops of the Crather. As he neared Cornell, there were several small towns which regularly made money at this time of year by giving tickets to students blazing through them on their way back to school. My father never blazed anywhere, but he did go through a red light as we slowly made our way to our goal. Suddenly, a motorcycle policeman was upon us. The policeman said, and I don't exaggerate his brogue,
Ho, where are you going?
My father pulled over to the side of the road and said very politely,
Gee, officer, did I go through that red light? I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Say,
he said.
are you Irish?
The policeman flushed and said rather testily,
Well, I'm Irish. What of it? Well,
said my father,
we're Irish, too. Meet the boy. We're taking him up to his freshman year at Cornell University.
My mother, who was Italian, said not a word. By the time the conversation between my father and the policeman was over, there was no longer any question of a ticket. The policeman was inviting us to his home for coffee and to meet the wife. My father politely declined and said he would
Drop by on his way back.
I have no idea whether my father even knew the name of the town whose laws he was violating, and I certainly do not. But when he heard that accent, he knew exactly how to behave. He acknowledged the policeman's authority.
Gee, officer, did I go through that red light? I'm sorry, I won't do it again.
But he then invoked a higher authority.
Are you Irish?
There was a joke my father liked to tell, and perhaps its moral figured in that Irish cop's reaction to us. The Irish maid is about to leave for the day when the master says to her, "Mary, this is terrible. Look at the dust on this table. I can write my name in the dust."
"Oh, sir,"
She says, misunderstanding.
"ain't education grand?"
Perhaps the thought of education, and particularly education for the Irish, was grand for that Irish cop, too. "Meet the boy," said my father proudly. "We're taking him up to his freshman year at Cornell University." What does it mean to be Irish? What does it mean to be Irish American?